Welcome back everybody. As you probably guessed from the title of the video, today we are going over this scope that we have here on my Radian rifle. This is the Vortex Strike Eagle First Focal Plane 1-8 scope. So previously we have reviewed this guy. This one here is the 1-8 Strike Eagle Gen 2 second focal plane. There are some differences for sure. The most obvious one, of course, is that it's first focal plane versus second focal plane. So in this particular scope here, we do have their EBR 8 MOA reticle, which we will get into in detail. But as you change the magnification on this one, it is going to change the size of the reticle, at least as you see it. Now, the good news is with that, at any point in the magnification range, like right now, I believe we're on 8, we are. At any point in there, so say, should you be on 2, 3, 4, whatever the case may be, all of the data outside of the center of the reticle itself that can illuminate is on, if you will. So if you wanted to use it for holdovers, if you're shooting at like 400 or 500 yards, you can do so, and it will be correct on a first focal plane scope, whereas on a second focal plane scope, the reticle is only true in terms of the BDC type of properties and the wind holds, etc., is only true when you are on the max magnification. So that is one of the big differences that you get with first and second focal plane, but that is a video for another day to really delve in deep into it. One of the other benefits that you typically get with a first focal plane versus a second focal plane, assuming we're in roughly the same price category, is that with first focal plane you get better glass. So I've actually asked several scope engineers why this is, and basically what they've told me is that in order to get similar types of performance results, you just need a higher quality glass, so that way the magnification range as you're going through it, you are minimizing the chromatic aberration on the outside of the image. And with first focal plane, it's just a little harder to do, so you have to use a little bit better glass. So there is that. I suppose we got way too into the reticle, but with that, let's come up close and personal and take a look at some of the scope features up close. Before we get into the details on the scope, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that sponsor is Gunspot. So for folks that don't know what that is, it is an online website where you can easily go over there, log in, or create an account if you don't already have one, and start buying and selling any of the types of things that we talk about here on the channel. It is an online auction site, so sometimes you get really good deals. Additionally, you'll see stuff that isn't for sale anymore. Just a lot of interesting stuff over there. So once again, thank you to Gunspot for sponsoring the video. Now let's check out the details of the scope. For the details, we'll start out here at the rear and then work our way forward. We do have a fast focus eye ring here, and what this is for is to allow you to get the reticle to be as crisp as possible to your eye for your vision, because everyone's vision is different. So it has a good bit of adjustability, and one thing I like about it is that it's difficult to move, so that way it's not going to accidentally bump off and change in field use. Some scopes to accomplish that rather have a locking eye ring, but this doesn't. It's very tight, which I like. Some of them out there are pretty loose, which is a little bit iffy in my opinion, but that one is good to go. So continuing on forward, we do have this piece that comes in the box with it. This is our throw lever that kind of clamps on there with that set screw. Now, some folks like throw levers, some folks don't. I personally like them, particularly on a low power variable optic like this. It just makes it much faster to go through the range 1-8, because most of the time, not always, I understand there are situations where this won't be true. Most of the time you're going to be on either 1 magnification or max magnification with the LPVO, and it allows you to go through it quickly. And as you guys can see there, it's just under 180 degrees of throw to go all the way. Now, some folks don't like these because they say they can be snagged on gear or any other item, and if you have it set like on 1X and it gets bumped over into 2X and you're in a CQB situation, it may cause you to freak out. Don't freak out, just carry on. But regardless, there is a way to minimize that, because basically you can set this at any angle that you want to. So if you're right-handed or left-handed, just depending on how the rifle lays on your body, you can set it so that it's not going to be caught on anything at 1X, let's say, for example. Or if you're a hunter and you want to have it at 8X because you have an offset red dot or something like that, then do the same with 8, if that makes sense. So there are ways to minimize the likelihood of that happening. That said, it still can happen, and if you're really worried about it, you can completely remove this or just never install it and just go with the actual ring itself, which does have those lines in there. That gives you some ability to grab it even if your hands are sweaty or whatever the case may be. Moving on up to our elevation and windage, they are capped, which in my opinion is my preference for a low power variable optic, particularly one that has a BDC style reticle like this one has. It's designed to be zeroed and then not messed with after that, and you're supposed to, while shooting out at distance, use the reticle to get you on target. So we do have quarter MOA adjustments, and I did a box test as I typically do with any scope that I'm not familiar with, and at least that 200 yards it was spot on, so we had no issues at all with the tracking on it. Now, is it going to track like a $4,000 Night Force? Probably not. But do you need that in a 1:8? Probably not. So there is that. One thing I do like about the scope, and that I've said in a lot of videos over the years, and I think companies are starting to listen, hopefully, is that in the scope body itself, from the shooter's perspective, you can see which way your adjustments are being made. I realize that's not a big deal for a lot of you, but for somebody like me who pretty much once a week zeros several scopes, it makes it much faster and just more intuitive. You don't have to pick your head up and look around and see which way you're moving. Additionally, the body of the scope itself is a 30mm mount, or 30mm body, I should say. So any of your 30mm mounts will work with it. We're using an Aero Precision lightweight mount here, and it works just fine. We will turn this guy around here, and you will see that we do have our illumination here. So is the scope daylight bright? That's something that folks always ask. I'll roll in pictures so you guys can see. It was taken in pretty bright sun earlier today, before we had the rainstorms roll in, and in my opinion is no. That said, it is a etched reticle, meaning the actual reticle itself is etched into the glass itself, so you don't need to use illumination. And I would say for me personally, I almost never use illumination, particularly when shooting during the day with an etched reticle. It just causes, at least for my eyes anyway, unnecessary bloom in the actual reticle itself that doesn't need to be there, and I can see the etched reticle just fine as is. So I just see no reason really to turn it on, but that said, it is there if you want to use it. We do have 2 night vision settings on this scope, and then we have several daylight settings. And one thing that is nice about the way that it does illuminate, though, is that it only illuminates the center portion of the dot and the ring. So it is quick in that regard if you want to use it for low light shooting. Like right now, we're about 30 minutes away from the sun going down, completely down. And in this case, it probably would be a little bit faster on 1x in this type of lighting. That said, it doesn't have a long battery life like you get with the red dot, so you just have to be careful with that. And the night vision settings, they do work just fine. I've tested it. That said, my opinion, shooting passively through a low power variable optic with night vision is less than optimal when compared with a holographic sight or a red dot sight. It can be done without question, and this optic is one that is capable of doing it, but you get into some issues with eye box and eye relief. Speaking of, let's talk about that while we're at it. So the eye relief on this scope is pretty good. Overall, as you can see here, one kind of way to measure that, if you watch this channel a lot, is where I put the rear lens in relationship to the charging handle, like where I set that, because I set it to be shot prone at max magnification, and then after that I just work with what I have and adjust the stock accordingly. So right here you can see it's moved forward, which is a good sign. It's telling you that it has pretty darn good eye relief. We'll roll in the actual number here from Vortex. That said, on 1x the eye box is pretty forgiving, which is nice. Like for the night vision shooting, that's what brought that up in my head. But when you get into 8x, that eye box gets pretty tight. That's going to be one of the downsides of this versus like a $1,500 1:8 or something like that. It's just generally those are going to give you a little bit better eye box than we'd have here. It's totally doable if you're shooting, totally fine if you're shooting prone or anything like that. But if you get into some weirder shooting positions where your head might not always be in the ideal situation, it's tighter than others. We'll just put it that way. It's not problematically tight or anything like that. It's just something to be concerned with. And just know that going forward into it. And in terms of size, I wanted to bring out one that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, and that is the 1:8x rather Strike Eagle Gen 2. You'll see here that it is a much larger optic. That typically is the case when you go second focal plane to first focal plane. Some of that has to do with the glass that needs to be there for the light gathering capabilities that we talked about earlier. And the weight on it, of course, is going to be different as well. Our first focal plane here is going to be 23.9 ounces with the battery. Speaking of, I didn't mention that, but the battery compartment is right here. It takes a standard CR2032 battery. And with that, let's check out the reticle. This scope is the first scope from Vortex to contain their new EBR8 MOA first focal plane reticle. And we will roll in some pictures here to let you guys know what the MOA subtensions are throughout that. If you guys are trying to get it to line up with a different, or rather a certain type of load, that could be helpful information. That said, it is designed to work primarily with 223, 556, and 308 loads. Of course, in the center of the reticle itself, we have a 0.75 MOA dot, and then we have that ring surrounding it. That does get illuminated when you turn illumination on. Moving up to the top of the reticle itself, that is where you have an auto ranging capability. So basically you can do it two ways. One, you can put someone's feet at the bottom there, that very far down little hash mark, and then where their head is approximately how far away they are. Now this is using military data that says the average person is 5'10" and their shoulders are 18 inches apart, or 19 inches if you're the Marine Corps. And what you'll see that using that metric, using their shoulder width, is that if you put their shoulders where it lines up with the outside of those bars there, that is approximately how far away that person is. So that is a way to range estimate should you find yourself on a two-way range. Now moving down back to the main reticle itself, those hash marks there are going to be your hold off points. And I should mention that this scope, according to the manual, is designed to be zeroed at 50 yards versus a lot of other competitive options which are designed to be zeroed at 100 yards. So that first hash mark there is going to be 300, and moving on down 400, 500, and 600 respectively. Those dots in the middle there are wind holds, and for approximately 5 mile an hour and 10 mile an hour full value winds at those distances, again with 556. So I zeroed mine at 50 yards as recommended, and did try it out all the way out to, in this particular case, 390 yards, which isn't a very far shot, with some M855, and found that it was pretty darn close and was able to get hits with reasonable accuracy. I will roll in the data here from my Strelok Pro app with that M855 62 grain load, and you can see here it's pretty close all the way down. Of course, different things are going to affect that, the way you have your scope height, the atmospherics, what type of elevation you're at, all of those things play a role, but as you can see, it's pretty close all the way down. With the reticle out of the way and the storm appearing to come back in as the winds have picked up and the rain is starting to fall, we will close out with the details of the scope that we haven't covered so far. So first and foremost, this scope was provided to me by Vortex for this review, so just full disclosure on that. They did not pay me for the review or anything like that, but they did provide this scope for the review. So what is the price on this one, right? That's something that everyone wants to know, because with this guy here, the Strike Eagle Gen 2 second focal plane, that's one of the more attractive features about it. In addition to, of course, Vortex having a awesome warranty, a lifetime warranty that they really do honor. You can do just about anything to a Vortex optic, and if it doesn't work right, they will send you a new one. They're very, very good about it, very well known for that in the industry, so that is good. But what does it cost? So street price, or rather the MSRP on this, I believe is $799. And street price right now, as of when I'm filming this video, it could change if you guys are watching years down the road, is around $599. And if you guys follow me on any of my social medias that you see here on your screen, I post links to this guy all the time on sale, as well as in my daily deals email that we'll get to here in a little bit. So sign up for those if you guys haven't done so. But it is not inexpensive, if you will, like this guy here. Sales on this lately have been coming down to around $350 or less. And, you know, again, with the street price right now being around $599, that's, you know, it's not quite double, but it's roughly double. And for some people, it might not be worth it. Who would it be worth it for? Well, the downside, I think, of this first focal plane reticle, this is my opinion anyway, yours may vary, is that the way that they tried to, I guess, compensate for it being a first focal plane reticle on 1X is that they put really thick hash bars at the 6, 3, and 9 o'clock position. Whereas if you're on 1X and you're inside of a room, anything inside of those bars that are coming in there, you put it center mass, you're going to drop somebody, right? But what it's doing is, it's, in my opinion anyway, and smartly so, compensating for the fact that on 1X, that inner ring and that 0.75 MOA dot is very small at 1X, whereas if you're on here on our second focal plane scope, the reticle doesn't change, so it's relatively large and very, very easy to pick up at 1X in a CQB type of situation. So it's a training issue though, because like I said, those bars are there, you can get very quick with it. However, you don't need that sort of training issue with the second focal plane because it's just easier to see. Obviously, if you want night vision modes, this is the one you're gonna go with. It has that capability. The other one doesn't. Size and weight on this one, this is a larger optic. Again, we've discussed why here, but the glass clarity is better. Like, I've looked at both of these side to side and you definitely get less, what I was talking about earlier, chromatic aberration, whereas on the outside of the reticle, you start to see color shifting and things like that. You have less of that here with this one. Vortex Optics are very, very durable. I've not heard of anybody breaking either of these scopes to date. So in terms of durability, I really don't think that's an issue. But obviously a reticle is a little bit different. It has similar features, but the actual, MOA subtensions are different. So you can sort of take that for what you will and do what you will with that information. Both of them work though, and in my experience, this reticle was closer to being on in real world data in terms of the BDC holdovers with 855 and 193. This one had a little bit more variance, but again, I live at roughly 300 feet of elevation. If I lived at 6,000 feet of elevation, that might not be true. So again, take that for what it's worth. Now, compared to other competitive offerings out there on the market, I think it's a very good value. There's a lot of scopes that are 1:8 first focal plane these days, particularly with 30 millimeter bodies, and a lot of them are going for a lot more money and have similar capabilities. Some of them have a lot less capabilities, particularly in the reticle. A lot of folks think they want simple in a reticle, and that may be true if you're shooting, paper at 100 yards, or you're shooting a deer within 200 yards. A simple reticle will probably get the job done, but if you get out there and the wind starts blowing and you're trying to extend the range of what you're shooting at and the targets start getting smaller, all of those details that we talked about with those wind holds, those auto ranging capabilities, etc., become more and more important, especially, again, should you find yourself on a two-way range where they become really important. So speaking of that, this scope here, anybody who follows me on social media, you guys will know, is a very popular offering amongst the Ukrainian fighters right now. A lot of people are using those over there and seemingly doing quite well with them. I would imagine over the next year or so, since this is a newer product that's only been out for a few months now, we'll start seeing them popping up in conflict zones around the world to kind of see how they do in that type of application. But right now we don't have that data, but we do have it for this one. So there is that. Other thoughts on it? I think we covered pretty much everything on it that is important. If you guys have any questions that we didn't cover, by all means, definitely let us know down below in the comment section what those questions are. You can also ask those at my social media sites that you guys see here on your screen. And as of right now, my Facebook is down. It could come back, who knows? But because of that, if you guys want to not be censored here on the channel and you've already subscribed and hit the notification bell and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here in your feed, sign up for my email list that you see at the website here on your screen. This email goes out at most once a month, and all it has in it is the videos since the previous email went out, so that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. And if you guys want to see if this thing goes on sale or anything like that, you're not following me on social media or not seeing my posts in your feed, it will go out in my daily deals email, and you can sign up for that at the website here on your screen as well. It goes out pretty much daily, as the name indicates, and it has 6 or 7 of the best deals that we find around the internet. So that way you guys can save yourself some time and some money, because if it's in that email, it's the cheapest I know of anywhere on the internet on that particular day when the email was sent out. And obviously that email has been very popular. A lot of people like that. And our unsubscribe rate is virtually 0, which you do not see a lot with emails. So it's been very, very popular. Let's just put it that way. So with that, guys, we will close the video out. Thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it. I truly appreciate each and every one of you that watch these videos, because without you guys, I would just be a crazy person talking to a camera and would offer no value to the community. You guys provide that value, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.